if I remember right, the director was saying that it was based off of his own experience and about the this new subculture. Well, I guess it was in the early 2000s of like soccer moms going away from soccer and taking their kids to these dojos that were guys that
The McDojos.
yeah, dojos that had really no idea what they were doing, mostly just full of shit, and
He
dealing with that.
he was doing. Was he doing taekwondo or no?
Taekwondo is what.
In I heard this interview with oh god, he's a stand-up comedian. He's a UFC guy.
Joe Rogan?
Joe Rogan was talking about how I think he studied taekwondo for years and years and years, and then started like sparring a bit with people who were doing mixed martial arts, and he just got his fucking ass kicked, and he was just like, he felt like all this stuff he learned for years and years was totally incomplete as far as being actually able to defend yourself.
Yeah, Rogan's pissed off a lot of people in a lot of different communities in terms of some of the opinions that he's had about certain art forms. Taekwondo, he's going hardcore.
Trashed it, right?
Trashed it, talked about a ton of stuff about dudes who study Wing Chun, and Kung Fu in general. The only thing I'll say is that, yeah, there are shitty practitioners in every art form, some more than others. I think Taekwondo got a bad rap just because that was the style that kind of was populated, that blew up here initially in the U.S. And you had so many people at these little McDojos. But, every art form's had, like, their detractors.
You don't hear much about karate anymore. Is that pretty much like just it's not as effective, and it's just people don't.
You don't hear, no, I wouldn't say that, but it depends. It really depends on the practitioner. Because
Right.
I've known some karate guys who are lethal, and I've seen other dudes who aren't. I've seen boxers who are really good and other boxers who are really crappy. It really
Right.
depends on who you study. One of the things that I do like about MMA is that, and I like the original version, like the first 10 UFCs that were out
With Hoist Gracie.
no
and-
gloves.
Where it was like no gloves, no. It was like human cockfighting.
Right, you could be on the ground for 10 minutes until you
Right.
choke the guy out.
And there was no gloves. There was no weight classes. When I first saw that type of stuff, it was like it. I saw a number of major martial arts figures go up against guys with different styles and get creamed.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
for me, that's when you see whether or not certain stuff is effective. Put them in a room, let them fight. And I'm not talking about because even with UFC stuff, there's gloves, there's rules, there's certain techniques that you can't use and stuff that.
Well, is it Muay Thai like the biggest? I guess the style now that most of those UFC guys use anyway. Like that's basically
Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, because Muay Thai is mostly for the striking. Jiu Jitsu is for most of the groundwork. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, because that's different than like Japanese Jiu Jitsu. But a lot of stuff, certain art forms you can't do certain techniques, and certain art forms are not made for ring fighting. Ring fighting.
Right.
So,
I remember I took Kempo for like a long time. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years. And I remember watching early UFC, and there was a Kempo guy. I was like, "Yeah, all right, Kempo." The guy got fucking destroyed, like immediately.
Is that when you quit? He was like, "Oh fuck this."
Fuck this! No. But I thought it was funny. Like a lot of that stuff, you see people get destroyed by.
look,
Wasn't Butterbean fighting in those in the beginning?
I don't
Yeah, he
know.
was in that. He was a
Tank
straight
Abbott.
Tank
boxer.
Abbott. That's
Yeah,
what I was
Tank
thinking.
Abbott.
Butterbean
No,
was in
it's
it. No, Butterbean did it
Butterbean.
too.
And Tank Abbott was this big, fucking, fat, strong guy who was somehow quick and beat the shit out of so many
he never
martial
beat
artists.
any of the major dudes. He didn't beat Gracie or any of the major fighters. He was always kind of like, I wouldn't say second tier,
Right,
but
undercard. He was
well,
always-
he never won the
If I
championship.
remember right, he might have actually a losing record, I think, in his mixed martial arts. So I mean, he won some big fights, but he also lost a lot of times too.
Yeah,
He
the
was,
guy
he
who
was
was
pure
real
striker.
big.
Pure striker. He wasn't able to do any martial arts per se. He was more like a boxer.
he kind of was listed as like a street fighter.
Yeah.
That was his style, you know.
Bar brawling.
He had a good chin, and he was able to put a fucking lick on somebody and knock him out. That's how he won most of his fights. I used to watch that shit all the time. I watched MMA.
That's when Dan Severn and
UFC,
Ken
yeah, I love that
Shamrock.
stuff.
Those are the big guys, right? Dan Severn and Ken Shamrock.
Yeah.
Oh, Dan the Beast.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, those were the first couple. Like, you know, I still watch it every now and then. Like John Bones Jones, Anderson Silva. You know, there's a number of dudes who I'll
Who's
still.
that guy, Brock? Or
Oh, Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, he was pretty.
Yeah.
He's actually supposed to make a comeback. He went from the UFC to the WWE, and now he's talking about going back to the UFC.
Some of the it
Rampage
makes
is
me
coming
wonder,
back,
like if
Yeah.
like a person like that, like because you know if you look at that versus boxing, and, you know in a boxing match someone could get hit in the head like fucking 50 times or whatever, and then in UFC, sometimes they can get hit like 3 times and they're done, and it makes you wonder what kind of damage you're doing. Like maybe you're better off making a comeback as MMA because like.
I've heard before. I don't know where I heard it before, but like the repetitive hitting with boxing is like worse damage because you just keep getting hit and hit.
Right.
With those big pillow gloves that they got.
And the thing with MMA is like it's still relatively new, so we don't have like with boxing we have over 100 years of data and things that you can look at, but with MMA not so much. So I would be interested in seeing like 20 years from now how some of these guys.
Well, you see the older guys once they get knocked out a couple times, they're not the same anymore. That you see them, you get hit once and then they're done. It's like that cumulative effect
But
over
I'm
years.
talking about
and
like
stuff.
guys like Muhammad Ali. We can see like what boxing's done to him. Like his life the last 30 years, not a high quality, not a quality of life that you would
Yeah,
want.
but
For
he's
somebody
got a disease. It's different.
But
Well,
isn't
not
there also
Not
saying that
necessarily
it
caused
might
by
be?
it, but
I mean, it was probably exacerbated by the head trauma, but it wasn't just at least in that instance. Because
They
there's
also-
other dudes like
But he was the winner.
George
He was the
Frazier.
winner most often than not, though. You know, you
Yeah.
get these guys like you're talking about that get beat up all the time. They're just a punching bag for everybody. I mean, even football players, they end up killing themselves because of head trauma. And
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
that was a big thing
But
with
that's
football.
like- Well, because what happens is like you get concussed, and if you get a concussion, and it's not good,
Yeah.
but if you're left alone or if you're left to heal, then it can be okay. But with football players and boxers, they get concussed and then they keep getting hit,
Yeah.
and that is where it gets bad. Is this like weird, whatever scar tissue in the brains has to build up? It's like
And once you get a concussion, you're more susceptible to them.
Yeah, and with boxers, I mean, they fight at the most. You're fighting maybe 3 boxing matches a year. I mean, when you're top level, at most 3.
Amateurs.
If you're a guy like Floyd Mayweather, you might be fighting 2 fights a year.
Yeah.
So whatever damage you're taking, you get 6 months to heal. A football player though, he gets a
Yeah, but
concussion.
you're also sparring the whole year round too.
You're
Yeah.
sparring too, but it's not as intense.
Yeah.
But like with a football player, you get a concussion, say week 1. I mean, you're trying to get back on the field within a couple of weeks because you want to be out there playing. You want to
Yeah.
make sure that you're in the next paycheck.
yeah.
And so in a season is 4 months long.